Hello everyone, happy Blue Year 2022. For the first episode of BioMarine360 this year, I wanted to focus on an initiative that was working on harmonizing data and educating people and companies on the best practices in their field. To do so, we are going in Scotland to interview Rhianna Rees, seaweed researcher at SAMS, working on the Seaweed Academy. The Scottish Association for Marine Science has been delivering independent marine science since 1884. And is dedicated to maintaining healthy and sustainably managed oceans through world-class marine research, education, and engagement with communities. Rhianna is a seaweed researcher that is passionate about the growth and expansion of the seaweed industry in a rapidly developing blue economy. Following her thesis, and after having worked some time at Mara Seaweed, Rhianna joined SAMS to help further grow the seaweed industry in the UK, especially with her new tool, which is the Seaweed Academy. Let's go meet her and learn some more. Hi, Rhianna. Thank you for joining me on the first BioMarine360 of 2022 to talk about seaweed in Scotland.
Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Super. So just before we go into the details, care to present yourself and your little background and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So my name is Rhianna Rees. I'm the Seaweed Academy Coordinator over here at SAMS. I have a bit of an interesting background, but to cut a long story short, I met some people at COP23 who got me really, really interested in seaweed. You know, I was looking for solutions for the global problems, and, you know, in all of this doom and gloom, I wanted to look for something to get really excited about. And I met some really exciting seaweed researchers who told me about how seaweed is the future and seaweed is the solution to a lot of our problems. So after that, I did my master's with a focus in seaweed and wrote my thesis. My final thesis was called Seaweed is Sexy, and it focused on the history of seaweed and the consumption and utilisation in UK. And then I went on to work at Mara Seaweed for a bit here in Scotland, and then finally now I'm over here at SAMS to help build what it will be the Seaweed Academy.
Wow, great. It's a full background, and I like the approach you have with Seaweed is Sexy. I think it's good to have a very modern approach to something that people don't know that much. And so to come to what you're doing recently, so you just mentioned the Seaweed Academy. Can you elaborate a bit more on this subject and what would be the objectives of this project?
Yeah, so the Seaweed Academy is essentially going to be a dedicated seaweed industry facility, offering a package of, you know, training, education, professional business development, using all the resources that SAMS have. Of all the places in the UK, SAMS really does have a focus on being a kind of algae expert. So with the research, education and enterprise sides of SAMS, which is the Scottish Association for Marine Science, we're able to offer some courses, hopefully, in the coming months to really focus on maritime skills and the development of aquaculture and specifically seaweed. So yeah.
Yes, it's I think it's the strength of SAMS, I think, because they do have that research side, but also have that expertise on the business side that they're trying to develop with SAMS Entreprise. So I think it has a duality that can actually help leverage some very interesting tools in Scotland. And so this brings me to the next question. How can SAMS, and what is SAMS' strategy to really help build the seaweed ecosystem around Scotland? Not that it doesn't exist, but how can we pass it to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are some questions here about, you know, catalyzing this industry growth. There are quite a lot of questions at the moment about market and opportunity for farming and development. And it's really a chicken and egg situation here, you know, who has the capacity to really build this industry growth? Is it the farmers who want to start putting ropes in the water, or is it the market who's then asking for this cultivated seaweed? One of the good things that we do have here in Scotland that works to our advantage is the fact that we have a lot of hand harvested seaweed, which can help to first build that before we start actually producing on scale. But SAMS has really a lot of knowledge networks. We have the questions that need answers. So how to manage your site, how to improve the process of harvesting, nursery development, deployment, and all that sort of research. So utilizing all of that together and offering training and development, that's the goal of SAMS, is to cover everything from planning and the biology to the accreditation, sustainability of seaweed farming, and final processing and market. There are loads of bottlenecks that need to be addressed, and they're really good at identifying what those bottlenecks are.
Absolutely. And once again, with this duality, I think they play a good role in leveraging both sides of the table to solve these bottlenecks, as you mentioned. And having been in Oban in 2019 before all the COVID fun happened, I thought that there was already a huge potential, and I've seen a lot of companies, for example, Mara, that you worked with, that's been doing some tremendous project, Oceanium as well. So it's good to see that things are moving forward. And so to kind of go up in the different levels, how do you envision Scotland play a role in the European seaweed space, or even the global seaweed space, in the next years? And you mentioned some bottlenecks, and do you think those will be some big challenges in the future to the growth of the industry?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, Scotland really does have a very long history with seaweed. It's not something that we've just recently started looking at the last 50 years. Back in 1750 to 1850, there was a huge kelp boom in Scotland, and great opportunities back then, but we used seaweed for very different things then. It was fodder in times of desperation, it was food in times of desperation, it was for soap and for other things that we wouldn't really use seaweed for now. Now seaweed is being lauded as something completely different, and which is great, but it means that we have a different approach now to how we farm and use the seaweed. Scotland has pristine waters that are perfect for growing seaweed without much implications for health and safety. And it also gives us the opportunity for things like bioremediation. So there are high nutrient outputs, such as salmon farming, which is quite big here in Scotland, and seaweed can help to rebalance this delicate ecosystem. And I think that that's really key. Also, Scotland has very unique species of seaweed that you don't find anywhere else. So as we start to separate what seaweed is more so into its species, as people start to learn more, I think that there will be those opportunities for a slightly more specialized approach to, sugar kelp or Alaria or Laminaria, which are the key species up here.
Absolutely. And it is something that we need to remember, is that a lot of these countries, such as Scotland, have been using it for a very long time, and that there's this very old tradition that some people tend to forget. And today, because there's kind of this rebranding with seaweed, people think that it's something that we just discovered, when there's so much knowledge that's already been accumulated for, I'd like to say decades, but it can even be in centuries in some cases. So it's good to see that all the science is being re-put together in order to create some strong value. And so this brings me to the next question, which is, with your background, so you mentioned you worked with Mara Seaweed before, now you're in the academic kind of space. So with your dual vision, how do you envisage a better collaboration between these two sectors in order to create a more efficient growth of the seaweed space in the next years?
Yeah, I mean, I went from academia into industry, back into academia to a certain extent. I think I'm sort of towing the line now between the two. And I think it's great. There are currently lots of gaps in research that are beginning to be addressed. And it does take time, but the industry needs growth now. So a lot of these questions need quite quick answers, and researchers are very good at turning things around quickly. And there is a lot of technical work that requires a lot of depth as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they collaborate. I mean, there is an element of distrust in industry as well of academic bodies, which I completely understand. And ultimately, academia is about finding and sharing knowledge. So all research that is done is usually published, but you need to take time to have it peer reviewed and approved, which can often take years. And industry, on the other hand, is about competitive advantage and protecting IP. So what you find is a divergence in collaboration, but the goals are analogous. They're very similar. So what we're hoping to do here through the Seaweed Academy and through just industry and academic convergence is to find that line, that sweet spot between sharing and finding and answering those questions, especially around things like optimization and bottlenecks. So, you know, there are some really key issues here that if we all work together, we can avoid expensive and time-consuming mistakes, I hope.
That's for sure. There's a lot of cases today where even researchers or companies are thinking they just discovered something, and when they dig a bit deeper, they find that there's been a paper available for the last 20, 30 years that was mentioning something quite similar. So of course, reuniting all this information is going to be key. And so for the Seaweed Academy, what are going to be the next milestones? What are the next steps that we can expect in the next weeks, months, this year?
Yeah, so hopefully we're going to have a launch event in April. I mean, COVID,
yeah.
everything that's happening, you know, like every conference has been delayed. So we're really hoping that we can have an in-person event. If not, then we're definitely going to have an online event to launch the Seaweed Academy. And then that will be the start of the courses. So we're hoping to have a one-day course, a couple of two-day courses and a week-long course at least by the end of the year. But hopefully a few of those being delivered by May or June this year. So yeah, some exciting prospects ahead, but lots of work to be done. And in light of everything, I'm hoping that we're kind of seeing the end of the tunnel and we're going to start coming out with seaweed on top.
Yeah, I think we're at the end of the tunnel, and it's going to be a good year for seaweed as well. So maybe it'll be a year of renewal, a renaissance. So let's just make it happen.
The fingers crossed, yeah.
Super. Well, thank you very much, Rhianna, for your time. Everyone, I mean, if you have a chance to look up SAMS and the Seaweed Academy, please do, because I think there's a lot to learn from what they're doing. And hope to see a bit more and hopefully be at the event in April.
Thanks very much. Hope to see you there.
Super. Thank you, Rhianna.
Thank you, Anton.